Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again. And today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So, we are in the final week of the December season, rounding out the year here. And as we go into this upcoming new season starting on Tuesday, I wanted to talk a little bit about how it looks like Snap might be getting a bit more expensive in the near future, and how we're essentially going to be getting an increase of the amount of content we are currently seeing in the game. For a while now, Marvel Snap has been fairly consistent with the new content it puts out. It does a season pass card at the start of the season, and then each subsequent week we have a new card release. There are spotlights every week, but previously the week of the season pass card is all 3 cards that have previously released. No new card is that week, as people have time to focus on the new card from the season pass. And it looks like that is set to be changing. So if you keep up with some of the data mined information, you would know that was actually going to be changing in December. However, last minute, shortly before the season started, Firestar was pulled from the game pretty much entirely, and her spotlight week was replaced with Blob, as he was originally going to be the card debuting during the first season pass week. That left a lot of players asking, hey, why did they pull this card? And we don't really know the reason. It could be because it was bugged. It could be because it wasn't balanced. There are a number of reasons this could have happened, and ultimately we don't know the answer. However, with Second Dinner out of the office for the holidays, it seems much less likely that we are going to see the same thing happen again, with the new card dropping during Season Pass week, Kyra getting pulled in a last-minute patch. Or any of the other cards in that month, for that matter, getting pulled and then being replaced. So it looks like going into the new year, we are going to be having an additional card enter the game per month. That doesn't sound like a whole ton on paper, but 12 new cards a year is pretty impactful when you think how just a small handful of cards can drastically impact the game, like we've seen in the last few months. This doesn't just drastically impact gameplay though, it also drastically impacts spending potentially. Especially if Second Dinner is going to continue the release cadence we've seen in the past, and we seem to continue to see with these data mines, where they only want to do one Series 4 card a month and the rest have been Series 5. This is pretty rough if you're trying to get cards with tokens, as a lot of players are kind of starved for tokens. It takes a lot of time to get 6,000 tokens, which is why generally the advice here is to use your boxes when you can to get a new Series 5 or multiple cards, and use tokens when you want a Series 4 card but you don't want the other cards available in that week. Here we have the overview for this week as well as the rest of January. January is a 5-week season, so normally 5-week seasons they have an extra card as opposed to 3 cards in the Battle Pass cards. It's 4 cards in the Battle Pass card. Well, now it is 5 cards in the Battle Pass card. So that is a whole ton of cards. It's essentially 50% more cards than we get during a normal 4-week season. Now, generally, we get a season update video shortly before the season goes live. Even with the team out of the office, these are things that are usually pre-recorded well in advance. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's just sitting in a scheduled upload on YouTube, and we'll be seeing that sometime this weekend. I think they usually drop these on Friday or Saturday. Not exactly sure the date, but it's usually over the weekend leading into the new season. We get a preview showing off all of the new cards that are coming to the game, as well as mentions of any other features that will be coming in the update. We do have a date for the next main patch. The next main patch is actually going to be after the new season starts. On January 9th is when we're going to have our next client patch. And then the next OTA balance update will likely be the following week on Thursday. Now, it is possible that the spotlights here for later in January, or even the series of some of these new cards, is changed around. We'll probably see in the overview video for the new season if these cards are actually coming at the series they say they are. I imagine Kyra definitely is, because we're not going to be getting any kind of patch before that season drops. But for the other cards like Hercules, Meek, Grandmaster, and Beta Ray Bill, I imagine those could be subject to change relative to what's going on in the patch. Also a reminder that the series drops are coming, so that doesn't impact a lot of the spotlights here. Actually, the only one it impacts, I believe, is Howard the Duck, who's going to be moving his way down to Series 4, but it's something to keep in mind, especially if you've been wanting to play specific decks like Ronin, get that Master Mold as he drops down in Series. One thing that has been praised about the Spotlight caches overall has been that If you are a Season Pass player, it has become easier to keep up with new card releases. It seems to generally be true, though spotlights do provide less agency than the old token system. Players do seem to be getting more cards overall if they are effective about using them on weeks where they have multiple cards missing. While I do think it's a really good thing adding more cards to the game in terms of like keeping the gameplay fresh, I do worry that it is going to become fairly more difficult to keep up with new releases without having to spend a larger chunk of money on the game if you want to be trying out a lot of new cards as they release. Especially so if they keep up this cadence with mostly Series 5 releases. One thing that I think would be a huge help here is if we got to see more Series 4 releases again to help offset this cost a bit, so players could more easily get new cards with tokens, which is something that seems to happen a lot when Series 4 cards release. Other alternatives could be them buffing the weekend quest amounts. We saw them finally, for the first time in forever, give more than 200 tokens on Havoc. He had a whopping 400 token return, which is pretty significant when you consider he's only a 3,000 token card. So there are definitely ways they can offset the fact that more cards are coming into the game and it's going to create more expense. And I'm hoping, even though I'm not overly confident about it, I'm hoping they do something to help with that. As I think in general, a lot of the player base is kind of okay with where we're at with new releases, but it's very easy to tip that scale in the other direction. And I think, at least with what we're seeing here, with a new Series 5 card entering the game at the same time as a new Season Pass card, it's gonna definitely make people feel the hit in their wallet a bit if they're trying to keep up with a lot of the new releases. Though I'm sure they could make the argument that part of the reason for this change is, well, if you are a collection complete player or mostly collection complete player, outside of the variants, Spotlight caches actually don't always have a ton of value, as yeah, you get that new card in one of the boxes, but your random slot is often not worth very much, and if you're not really into the variants, those other slots aren't worth very much either. The way the Spotlight system is designed, it benefits more from the fact that you're missing more cards. So I do wonder if this new release cadence is them trying to double down a bit on that philosophy of we don't want most people to have most of the cards, and by making it harder to get all the cards by introducing more content, well, people will skip some of those weeks, and then future Spotlight weeks will have more value to them, as they will more often have weeks where you're missing 2 or even all 3 of the cards. And those are generally the weeks most people recommend opening in, as long as you have multiple things you're going for that you don't currently have. This is also an effective way to squeeze the whales a bit harder, as if they're already committed to spending whatever it takes to keep up with the new cards, keep up with new Spotlight variants, all that stuff, a lot of the people spending that amount of money are probably not going to even blink at the fact that, well, maybe I have to spend a little bit more to have some more Spotlight keys so I can get that new card when the Season Pass releases, aside from just picking up the new card in the pass. So yeah, I'm curious to see how all this goes. I'm sure someone who is more into the math side of it is going to break things down more to actually like quantify how much more this can increase the spending of the game. Right now, I think we're at a point where a lot of players are happy being just a pass-only spender, or maybe spending slightly more than that on some cheaper value bundles. But I do wonder if the addition of another new card, even though probably good for the gameplay, is going to kind of set off that balance we're currently seeing, and if Second Dinner has any plans to try and keep it balanced out like it is now while introducing more new content. If you're curious about which of these cards or weeks you should be saving up for, I'll have an upcoming guide going over this, going into the new season. As always, data mines aren't final information. However, given we're not getting a patch until the 9th, I think it's pretty set in stone that Kyera is going to be dropping in the first week of the season alongside the Season Pass Scar, and we should get more information about that this weekend. Once we do, I'll probably do a follow-up video talking about anything else we learn. I do think January is going to be a lighter month on cards for a lot of players, though. I think that aside from Kyera, who does seem very appealing, the other cards in this month are a bit more niche. Now, I could be wrong about that. It is hard to evaluate cards until you play with them, but I'm not the highest on some of these other cards coming up, so maybe January is a month where you opt to save a bit, as there are some other cards coming down the road that looks more powerful. But hey, maybe you're missing some of these cards, you don't have these cards and you want them, like Annihilus, Werewolf, Loki. these cards could be decent to pick up if you haven't had a chance to already, so it's going to depend a lot on what you're actually looking for. Regardless, it seems like it's going to be a pretty exciting time for Snap. New cards often have a pretty big impact in this game, and I'm very curious to see what happens with a new card releasing at the same time as a Season Pass card. Season Pass cards generally get played a whole ton, as that's the one card that a ton of the player base has access to very easily, and I'm curious to see how that compares to the new card that releases that week. It's also going to mess with how I do content a bit, as I try and do some day one decks for the new card that releases. So if we're having 2 new cards released on the same day, maybe we'll have 2 new card deck videos. I'm not sure. Gonna have to figure that out. Regardless, I'm excited for January. Kyra is by far the most exciting card of the month to me, so I am happy that it is dropping first, and I'm curious to see how this card has an impact on the metagame. And then I imagine we're going to see some interesting changes going into the patch following her week of release. Also, if you're curious about the image here, Marvel Snap Zone has released a Spotlight tracker where you can kind of plan things out in terms of what you want, what you're going to use tokens for, and it will give you averages on how many keys and how many tokens you need, how many you will earn. It's actually a really good tool, and if you're trying to plan things out, this is what I do to kind of manage my resources more effectively, which now more than ever is probably more important given that we're getting more content added to the game. I definitely recommend giving it a shot. It's pretty sweet, and it's just a solid tool to be able to get an expectation of the amount of resources you're going to need compared to what you have. So yeah, I'll leave a link for that in the description, but that's going to wrap it up. Let me know what you think in the comments below about the changes we're seeing here in terms of the new release structure. What are your expectations? What cards are you excited for? Let me know in the comments below. That's going to wrap it up for this one. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.